Good to go? All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. You're good?
Yeah.
Minerva? Excellent. I now call the Planning Commission meeting to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Nowitzki,
Here.
Vargas,
Here.
Hoyam,
Here.
Sanau,
Here.
Kaiser,
Here.
Fiorentino,
Here.
and Wolf, not present.
Thank you. It would now be in order to approve the minutes if there is a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the April 6th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Nowitzki,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sanau,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Fiorentino,
Yes.
and
And I want to just say, before we go too much further, I forgot to read this earlier. This is an official notice that this meeting may be conducted by a combination of in-person and electronic means following a determination by City Manager Kelly Bourgeois and emergencies declarations by the United States, State of Minnesota, and Columbia Heights Mayor and City Council. This meeting will occur by a combination of in-person and electronic means. So that's all there is for that one. Our first case is a variance for the residential accessory structure in the front yard of 3919 Reservoir Boulevard. Madam City Planner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure everyone on Zoom can see the presentation on the screen that I've shared. Thanks, Tom. Okay, so the first public hearing item this evening is for a variance to construct a detached accessory structure in the front yard of a residential property located at 3919 Reservoir Boulevard Northeast. The site was developed prior to 1938 with a single-family home set back only 5 feet from the rear lot line. A detached single-car garage also exists at the rear of the property and has been there for some time. Variances may be granted when the applicant for the variance establishes that there are practical difficulties in complying with the zoning ordinance. Current city code stipulates that no accessory structure shall be constructed or located within any front yard, and that accessory structures for one or two family dwellings shall be behind the principal structure building line in the front yard. The development of this lot occurred prior to today's zoning regulations and does not provide reasonable space for the construction of a standard detached garage behind the principal structure's front building line. There is an existing substandard garage constructed in the rear of the property that is currently being used as storage. Even if this existing structure were to be removed, there would not be adequate space to construct a standard garage in its place. This is an existing condition not caused by the current owner. The proposed new garage would conform to all current setback requirements and will be served by the existing driveway accessed from Reservoir Boulevard. The comprehensive plan calls for reinvestment, renovation, and modernization of the city's single-family housing stock. The granting of this variance will result in a new functioning two-car garage for the property that will enhance the overall functionality and aesthetic of the site. It will also provide more adequate on-site parking that conforms to current setback requirements and contributes to the improved value of the neighborhood. One neighboring resident reached out to the city last week in support of the variance application, stating that they would love to see a nice garage constructed on the subject property, and that it would make an improvement on the whole neighborhood. No comments of opposition were received by the city staff. The variance shall be conditioned to comply. Let me show you the site plan. Sorry. The variance shall be conditioned to comply with building code, stormwater regulations, as well as all other city zoning codes pertaining to detached residential accessory structures. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed variance, and I'm available for any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions for city staff at this time?
Was there any discussions about either keeping or removing the existing smaller garage as part of this variance?
Yeah, so the current garage in their rear is, like I mentioned, a substandard size of 20 by 14, and we've conditioned the project, so we are allowing them to keep the substandard garage as it is currently used as storage, and it's almost a hassle to remove it, but that the garage cannot exceed a combined square footage of 1,000 square feet. So I know the plans don't show it, but it's actually going to be 24 by 30 feet, which then when added by the 20 by 14 existing garage would be exactly 1,000 square feet. So it's conditioned and intended to stay, but cannot be used as a garage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
this
Tom.
is Tom. I have a question for city staff. I'm wondering if there have been similar situations and garages that have been approved in the immediate vicinity along Reservoir Boulevard in any recent years.
Commissioner Kaiser, thank you for the question. So I am not aware of any immediate projects projects in this vicinity of this garage. However, there are several occasions in the city where we do have lot sizes and configurations that make it difficult to comply with this more modern standard of placing accessory structures behind the front of the principal building. So I think it's going to occur, but it is warranted. One of the things that we also promote for within our current code is covered parking spaces for 2 vehicles. That's a value that we are striving towards with new construction or any new garage. So it's complying with that standard and trying to fit on a lot that makes it very difficult. I think we will see additional proposals in the future, and they would also be supported by staff. There's such a mix of oddly shaped lots, narrow lots, scattered throughout the city, that I don't think it's time to remove this standard from the code per se, but take these variances when they do come to the commission.
Thank you.
That's good. Any more questions, Tom?
No, that'll do it.
Great. And does anyone else have any questions? Great. Then at this time, I would like to open a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak on this matter, you can either, I don't know if you want them to raise their hand on Zoom if they have something to say, Minerva, certainly if anybody here in the room would like to come up to the podium, you're very welcome to do that.
Perhaps we start with in-room and then...
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Let's see. Is anyone in the room here want to say anything? I don't see any hands up here. So anybody on Zoom need to say anything at this point? Okay, good. We're all here for the other case, it sounds like. All right, wonderful. I will now close the public hearing. And is there any discussion among the commissioners? If not, motions are on page 17 of our packet. And not hearing any discussion, any motions would certainly be in order.
I motion to move to waive the reading of the draft resolution attached.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we waive the reading of the draft resolution attached, although maybe we have a roll call. Sorry, all the votes have to be roll call votes because we're having this on Zoom. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Nowitzki,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sanau,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes. And do we have a motion on the actual variance?
You have it.
Come on, somebody. I move to recommend that the Planning Commission recommended the City Council approve of the variance for the proposed detached garage located at 3919 Reservoir Boulevard Northeast, subject to the following conditions of approval. And there's 12 of them.
There are 12 listed there, and they are listed in the draft resolution. Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend to the City Council approval for the variance of the proposed detached garage to be located at 3919 Reservoir Boulevard Northeast, subject to the conditions printed in the document. We have a roll call vote, please.
Nowitzki,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sanau,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes. This will be heard by the City Council
May 10th, I believe.
May 10th. So if you have any interest in that, the city council is the one who gets to make the final decision. So let's move on now to case number 2, our preliminary plat approval, or on the, I don't have the address right in front of me here, or the case number. Let me get to that point.
Page
28.
Thank you. We have a new format for our packets here, which I'm getting used to, so thank you for bearing with me. This is case number 2021-0502. The applicant is Reuter Walton Development, and we're talking about the affordable housing building at 825 41st Avenue Northeast. I will now let city staff guide us through the application.
Just tell me, where do you want to start?
You can start from the top. I'm just gonna be talking.
Do you want any of the historical?
And it looks like they're going to try to kind of follow along with the plans as Minerva walks us through this for everyone who's on Zoom.
Just switch it, and yeah, we'll need it. I'll probably need it after the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry.
No problem, take your time.
So the second and final public hearing item this evening is for a planned unit development, preliminary plat and easement vacations to allow for the construction of a 4-story, 62-unit affordable housing development that includes a remainder parcel for the potential future development of Seika Food Shelf. The project site is located at the northern vacant portion of the city's Public Safety Center near the intersection of Jackson Street Northeast and 42nd Avenue Northeast. Prior to the Public Safety Center, the site historically housed Columbia Heights High School, Columbia Heights Junior High School, and most recently the Northwestern Electronics Institute, a technical college that operated on site until the year 2002. The portion of the existing lot in which development is proposed served as both the school's recreational field and parking lot, with approximately 500 parking stalls. Historical aerial imagery even suggests that 1 or 2 single-family homes were once present on the site. The current use of the portion of the lot in question is snow storage by the city's Public Works Department, as well as minimal parking for the neighboring residential developments. The site currently resides in the multiple family residential district, also known as R4, and the city's comprehensive plan guides this site for transit-oriented development, which has a mix of residential, retail, and office uses. Multi-family development is permitted by right on this site. The rezoning to planned unit development, or otherwise known as PUD, will allow flexibility with the city's strict zoning requirements while also requiring a high standard of building quality and site design. The PUD ordinance requires the Planning Commission to hold an informal public hearing, which we are having here tonight, and a formal hearing at a city council meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for Monday, May 10th. The preliminary plat for the subdivision of land, as well as the removal and replacement of existing easements on site, will also receive a final decision by the City Council as part of this project. The project proposes the creation of 2 separate lots. Lot 2, at 1.3 acres, is intended for Reuter Walton development, while Lot 3, at 0.4 acre, is intended for the future relocation and development of Seika Food Shelf. They will come in at a later date for the development of that site. Tonight we're talking about Reuter Walton Development, which is the apartment building proposed on Lot 2 of the subdivision, proposes very minimal setback flexibilities from what is allowed in the R4 existing zone. They're only asking for, in regards to setbacks, a 3-foot encroachment into the front yard and a 5-foot encroachment into the corner side yard. The residential building is proposing 108 parking stalls, which is the minimum required number for the number of units proposed. The applicant is not requesting any flexibility in the number of parking spaces, but rather the number of permitted compact spaces on site and the parking setbacks. Vehicles are proposed to access the site from Jackson Street Northeast or 42nd Avenue Northeast. The entryway closest to 42nd Avenue Northeast is also accessible from 41st Avenue Northeast. The existing site has 4 separate easements that will need to be vacated and or amended as part of this project. They include a platted perimeter drainage and utility easement, a stormwater drainage utility easement, another utility easement, and a parking easement. In regards to a park dedication, the applicant will make a financial contribution to satisfy this requirement, which would be included in the development contract. The applicant has proposed a floor area ratio of 1.24. Floor area ratio is a unit of measurement used to measure the amount of square footage in a building compared to the overall site. The comprehensive plan recommends an FAR, floor area ratio calculation, between 1 and 3 for transit-oriented design areas in the city. A floor area ratio of 1.24 is consistent with the comprehensive plan goals. Additionally, the project proposes 48 units per acre. This falls in line with the target residential density for urban centers adjacent to highways and transitways. The project site is well within a half mile of Central Avenue, which aims for 40 to 75 or more units per acre under transit-oriented development guidelines. So we're on the lower end here. Now to the facts of findings. In regard to the preliminary plat for the subdivision of land, staff finds that it conforms with the city's subdivision ordinance for a planned unit development. The proposed subdivision is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff believes the proposed subdivision contains parcel and land subdivision layouts that are consistent with good planning and site engineering design principles. In regards to the planned unit development district plan, staff finds the proposed project conforming to all applicable requirements, consistent with the applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan, and minimizes any adverse impacts on property in the immediate vicinity and public right-of-way. A number of residents have spoken out in opposition of the proposed project. Their comments are included in the agenda packets and include concerns of increased traffic and density, parking, privacy, and drainage. Staff noted that traffic is not projected to increase a detrimental amount and that the proposed density is on the lower end of what is guided for transit-oriented development. Staff also noted that this project will actually help alleviate the drainage issues in the area and stormwater and sewage and all of that as well. Concerns were also raised about the size, height, quality, and design of the proposed apartment building, as well as the future commercial retail use of Seika. The applicant and staff noted that the height of the proposed building is lower than the existing adjacent development to the east, known as Crestview, and that the proposed materials are of high quality. Staff also noted that the future potential use of Seika is not part of the proposal at this time. The subdivision of land is under review for this project, and Seika will have to go through a PUD amendment when their proposal is ready. Thus, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed planned residential development, easement vacations, as well as preliminary plat. And the applicant and city staff are available for any questions.
Excellent. And before we get to that point, I just want to make sure everybody understands, we're talking about 4 different things here, right? We're approving the preliminary plat, we're vacating some easements, we're not actually approving anything. We're recommending to the city council that they approve all those things or not, and plan the PUD as well. And then finally, the last motion, if we do make one, will be the approval of the ordinance amendment to be consistent with all that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that also includes not only vacating easements, but amending and replacing. So they're creating and taking away. It's sort of what we are calling in-house as a cleanup, an easement cleanup of the site, because as it is to be developed, some easements are no longer needed, new ones are needed, so on and so forth.
Exactly. So, with that in mind, are there any questions from the, I'm sure there are. So, Eric, why don't we just start with you and we'll just kind of go down the line here. Sure. I'm sure there's going to be a lot.
One to kick off for city staff. In the neighborhood meeting that we had last week, 2 weeks ago, and then comments that are in our packet, there's been multiple comments about drainage in the area, sewage backup in the area, not necessarily on this property, but in the area. And just a brief history of kind of things that have happened on the site, where those conversations, those comments are coming from might be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Snell. So, in the vicinity and related to this project, there's a known sewer issue that the city has had for several years. This project would contribute to an issue that really manifests further north, just south of the Hy-V site right now, where we have a problem of pipe sizing and grade. So, the city has been aware, and we've been working with that consideration in mind throughout this process, that additional units that are brought onto that system will have to alleviate and fix that issue. And moreover, a recently announced project on the Hy-Vee site that went public last night, redevelopment of that site will further exacerbate that very same issue. So both of these parcels will now contribute the development of these sites to this sewer problem. And this sewer problem is interrelated with stormwater surcharges during heavy rain events. So inflow and infiltration on a regional basis, because the collection district that we're talking about is basically the entire middle of the city, if we could bring that up, that funnels into a sewer main that essentially all converges just south of the Hy-Vee site. Inflow and infiltration from that entire mass are creating issues and excess water into the system. Engineers right now, we have a third party, Bolton and Menk, that's completing an analysis of existing flow rates. So where are we at present day before anything happens, and what we need to do to fix to not only take care of those issues, plus all of the issues that future development would bring and burden our sewer system with. Both projects, and this one included, are conditioned upon those improvements being accounted for and completed, and contractual obligation by the developer to work.
Can I
with the
just
city.
hear you repeat that one more time? Because that's a really important point.
Right, so this project and the one downstream, which is north, are going to be conditioned, this is conditioned on alleviating the storm and sanitary sewer issues that are already known by the city. We can't exacerbate the problem. One of it's actually an opportunity to fix it, which is a positive from our perspective. Because stormwater compounds the sanitary issue, the stormwater improvements that are contemplated on this site are cleaning up a stormwater condition that was punted on, okay, let's say in the last development. The last PUD with the townhomes in Crestview was allowed to build an undersized pond and then overflow onto this parcel as a designed condition, with future potential expansions of a surface pond that serves Crestview. So it's an opportunity to clean up and alleviate a stormwater issue that is exacerbating the sanitary issue, and pay for it through these two developments that are being contemplated. But again, these projects would not be formally approved by the council and the engineering department through our development contract process without this fully being designed, vetted, and financed. And we're just not there. We have the study with the preliminary results, but they put in flow meters into the sewer, and we need rain events that are significant so that we can measure the existing flow rates to the inflow and infiltration rates. So all of that's forthcoming, all of it's baked in, and it becomes a much bigger conversation that's taking place.
Great. Any other questions, Eric?
No, not for now.
Great. Mike?
Nope, he pretty much covered the stormwater, so.
Good. Stan?
Now, that whole conversation you just had about making sure the stormwater and everything works, they have to guarantee that. Is that what you're saying?
They're not fully responsible, so they will be responsible for what they add to the existing problem. So the city acknowledges right now we have an issue that needs to be fixed regardless.
That I know.
So this project is integrated with those plans, and we'll have to figure out the cost-sharing matrix once those options are determined. So a lift station is one, pipe ramming to expand the size of pipes all the way from Central to Fridley, essentially. But these are things that we've made incremental improvements over the last decade but haven't fixed, that now is an opportunity to do that.
Another question is, I hear SECA brought up in the conversation a lot. 4/10 of an acre just does not seem like enough space for SECA, so I don't think they should be in the conversation unless somebody at least penciled in on that outlet 3. I don't see how that's going to be used for anything. Sounds like the developer's getting the good land and leaving us with the bad space.
I think there's,
And a segue into that,
Yeah.
are we getting paid properly for something like that? And does that go through the EDA? Does that go through, where does that go through?
So the funding and finance, we can touch on it because but it isn't part of this analysis for
Okay, then
land
we
use.
don't have to.
But
So I think it's a good point to. Go ahead.
Yep, it's public. A lot of the structure of the deal is out there. The city would be selling a portion to to Roder Walton, which is under contract for $450,000. That's public information. The remainder parcel is contemplated to.
Aaron, can you maybe lean
Yep,
into the microphone
sorry.
a little bit more?
Yep. So Seika or Roder Walton is under contract for their piece, and Seika, we're developing a contract for the balance. In this case, we can't disclose that amount. It's the remainder of the appraised value less the $450,000. So that's how we derive those values. They are going to have to prove to this commission and the rest of the city council and residents that they can fit onto the site. We have sketched in their plan, but they're not as far along as Roder Walton to be discussing the finite details of setbacks and all of the things that we'll have to go through again with Seika that are going to have the same bar that Roder Walton has. That's about all I'd like to add on that.
Okay.
You know, for this, we're getting into policy decisions at the council.
That's right, and that's
You
a
know,
good point, and Aaron, I appreciate that, and I want everybody to understand, we're looking at this as an informal body. It's up to us to recommend some action for the city council, but the final decision will be made by the city council, not by us. So, great. Any other questions, Stan?
Not right now.
Great, Mark, do you have anything?
Just regarding the storm sewer. So there's an actual drainage easement in there that's accommodated by 2 catch basins or storm manholes, and that's going to be vacated and replaced by a storm defender type system.
That's correct.
And I'm just wondering, these diameters in these pipes for the size of the area are pretty, I mean, these pipe slopes are flat, and the diameter, I mean, it's I looked at the notes and it says the engineer reviewed them and they're fine with accommodating that, but has any thought been put into the 42nd Avenue 15-inch RCP line being upgraded to facilitate the changes to the issue to the north that you were talking about?
Commissioner Vargas, I think that type of recommendation would be born out of the study that's being completed. Engineering, again, we will condition any approvals as part of this project by final authorization and oversight with the city engineers, so they would completely vet those questions, but I don't think we don't have the recommendations presented to us from Bolton and Menk.
And then one question, I've heard reference to buildings that used to be there that are no longer there. There's soil borings checked to see if there was presence of asbestos in those footings of the old buildings?
There have been soil borings. Perhaps the developer could help us. I don't think that they were tested for asbestos-containing materials. 2 single-family homes is what we show on this development site in the corner that Minerva's kind of outlining right now. And we don't have good demolition records on file with the city right there. So there was a number of borings to test for suitability of construction and groundwater as it relates to the stormwater system that's being proposed. But Kyle, can you just give me a yes or no on asbestos? Yep.
And can you just repeat that, Aaron?
No asbestos is the answer the developer has given.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mark?
Oh, thank you.
Tom, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Wonderful, and I have no questions myself. At this point, we'll have maybe have the developer come up and answer any questions from the council or from the commission. So maybe just quickly before we start, on Mark's point, just tell us exactly what's been done for the examining the soil in the area and what were the findings.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So far what's been done, Chair and Commissioners, for soil testing is, as Aaron mentioned, groundwater investigation to determine if there was any groundwater present at elevations that would impact construction. There was not any groundwater identified. suitability of construction. So what is the quality of the soils? Will the native soils provide sufficient bearing capacity, or will we need to import? Again, largely the native soils will be able to be used at the boring locations that we tested. And then we did some environmental investigation as well for not only asbestos, but other contaminants. And we did not find any unsuitable contaminants in those soils. What I will say is we will enter into what's called the voluntary cleanup program through the MPCA. And as part of that program, we are still responsible for, even though we did some borings and if we didn't find any contamination, we are still responsible for cleaning up any that we do end up encountering. So for example, we could, we put a bunch of borings in the site, we could end up excavating and we find out there's a hot spot or gasoline or something like that. We are required to mitigate that at the time of construction.
Great.
So,
Good. Well, let's go the other direction. Tom, we'll start with you if you have any questions for the developer.
No, not yet. Thank you.
Good. Mark, do you have anything? Not at this time. Good, Stan?
Not right now.
Mike? Eric?
Not at this time, no.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
thank you as well.
All right, at this point, we will open it up, unless there's anything else that the city staff wants to add, we were going to open it up, and we will open this up to a public hearing, and I know there's a lot of people who probably want to talk. There's certainly a lot of people here in the audience, and we want to get through this in an orderly fashion and respect everybody's time. So if you would like to speak, please come up to the podium, tell us your name, and say what you'd like to say. Good evening, sir.
My name is John Haluska, and I've lived in the community, my family has, since 1947.
Great. What's your address, John?
Well, my address in the community is a house that I keep for my grandkids.
Okay.
My granddaughter lives
It doesn't matter where you live,
Yeah, it's
you're
42
welcome here anyway.
It's 4228 Jackson Street,
Okay,
and my sister lives at 4220. I'm also here on her behalf.
good. You're just down the street from me.
Okay,
Well
right.
done.
So
Thank you for coming by.
The history that you've given on that site is inaccurate. Initially, it was a wetland that extended all the way from about 45th up until the, I would say, the south end of the track for the old high school, which was built on the south end of the site. And that was built, I believe, in 49 or 50 or something like that. I remember when it was opened, because I lived then at 4040 Van Buren. My family did. And Walt Cottrell lived right across the street from the high school, right behind my house, my family's house. So I was just a little kid then, and I remember the classes that they still had at the old school, which was on the corner of 41st and Central. It would be on the on the northwest corner there. So that's and that area would flood. I mean, it's a 100-year flood zone easily, if not a 50. So that means that any given year it has a 1% chance of flooding. Or if it's a 50, it has a 2% chance in any given year. So I myself have seen it flooded and mopped water up out of the basement of my father's and my mother's home at 4233 Quincy. Okay? I've seen it flooded all the way up to Ostrander's house. Ostrander's house was on the the southeast corner of 42nd and Jackson. Okay, the house north of that was a Mason house, I believe. It may have been a Cordiac. The houses across the street were all Masons. Piro's house was on the northeast corner of that intersection. So I'm well familiar with the area and its history. Initially, that whole property was owned by the Floor family. It was an orchard and truck garden, and that extended quite far up there, almost a hilltop, I believe. But at the on the west side of Central, between 43rd and 44th, there was a series of truck farms when I was a kid. And all of that area, that half of that block, about the middle of what's destined to be hopefully the Hy-Vee site, all the way over past Quincy Street between 43rd and 44th was a pond that was reduced down to Jackson Pond, which was a skating rink on the corner. Historically, in my lifetime, I've seen that whole area flood several times. So I'm very concerned about what the developer just said about the soil conditions, because you have a historical wetland. So the stability of the site is in question. The houses that were there were story and a half, I believe. The original houses on that corner were story and a half. Single-family residential houses, just like the houses across the street to the west of the site. So that presents a real problem. Historically, in recent decades, we've seen sewer problems all down that street. And what I
We could
heard
maybe
you
mute-
say,
excuse me, sir. Can we mute the people that are, whoever's on Zoom in chewing gum, if you could maybe mute your microphone, please? Thank you.
and so what I heard you say is that you recognize that there are sewer and water issues on the site. And nothing in this proposal mitigates that. You're hopeful that it doesn't add to the issue, but it's not mitigated. But yes, staff, without all the information, is proposing to forward this to the council for their consideration with your approval, with your endorsement. I really don't find that makes a whole lot of sense. I deal with building code and design issues and structures all over the country because I'm with the American Wood Council. I'm a member of that and testify before code hearings everywhere. And it's just surprising that you would say that and want to push it on up the ladder with your endorsement. And then the developer just said that he is uncertain as to the soil conditions. That's what I listened to there.
I don't think that's what he said,
said
but
it was
I'll let you go
It was
ahead anyway.
incomplete. He said it was incomplete in terms of the analysis.
Yeah.
So we don't have a complete analysis. We don't have a plan for handling the water issues. We don't have a plan for handling the sewer issues. None of those are in place, yet you're proposing that the Planning and Zoning Commission endorse it and send it on up. I can't see that. Then there are issues in terms of livability in the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood of single-family houses. A lot of people have been, like my family, been there for 50 years. And it changes the whole character of the neighborhood. I am all in favor of low-income housing, providing housing. What I'm not in favor of is a 4-story building in a residential setting. I'm not in favor of parking 62 new units in that setting, and I find it really hard to believe that you have anything in the way of a traffic study that indicates that there won't be an impact on the traffic going east and west on 42nd or north and south on Jackson or on Van Buren, particularly if the Hy-Vee development goes ahead. That traffic is going to increase dramatically. The other thing is the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And if you, I don't know if you, well, some of you are familiar with the Perro houses on the north side of the site across 42nd. That's going to, think of how much shade that is going to cast on that residential area in the wintertime. That's got to be a concern. So, I think you guys are getting way ahead of yourselves in considering this. And the other thing is, the notice came out and went to people with property within 350 feet. This neighborhood is a lot bigger than that.
So that's the law, and that's.
I know,
what they
I
have to do.
understand
So, I
that.
mean, if
I
you're going to
read the law,
criticize city
yeah.
staff for following the law, then I think we're probably
I
done
realize you
here.
have to follow the law.
Okay, thank you.
But
You
it's
can
a lot
complain
bigger-
about it, and you
it's
can
a
want
lot
to change the
bigger
law,
than
but that's
that, and I
different than
assume
complaining
you-
that they're actually following the law.
In terms of that notice, you also followed the law, but it really gave people very little time to consider, people being the residents of the area, citizens of the community, little time to consider the impact of this. It gave you guys very little time to consider. So it'd be nice to know when the staff first got wind of this proposal. The other thing is, what's it going to do to the property values, particularly across the street and to the north of the site? Has that any consideration been given there? I mean,
Sir,
I
we're not
think you
allowed to, we're not actually allowed to use that as a reason
Well, but
to
you-
act
but
one way or
you're-
the other
but
by
you're
the law.
allowed-
And so I'd like you to wrap up your comments now, because we have a lot of people who'd like to talk to, all right?
So I think that has to be considered.
Okay.
But I think you have some real, rather than speculative, factual issues to consider, and that is the water and the drainage and who pays for any remedial stuff that has to be done to correct any problems that crop up in the future, because I don't see that in this proposal at all.
All right, very good. Thank
Okay.
you. I want to get some answers to that, too. You're not alone.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else here in the room who'd like to speak? You're welcome to do so right now. Good morning, or good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Could you please tell us your name and where you live?
Yes, indeed. It's kind of hard to talk with this mask on, isn't it?
I feel your pain.
I know you do. So my name is Patrick McVeary. My wife Stacy and I live directly across the street from the proposed development on Jackson Street. We're at 4148 Jackson Street. Our house is the cute little house that's currently under a little renovation project. We got some stucco that we're in the process of getting up in the next few weeks. I'm a longtime member of the community. I bought my house 22 years ago. There were still a couple of residential homes across the street from me on Jackson Street when we moved in. I've got a background in the construction trades. I've done a lot of renovation projects myself. I'm a little bit of a armchair architect, and in law school I studied underneath Bill Griffith, one of the most well-respected and well-known planning and land use attorneys in Minnesota, if not in the country. So I just say that to let you know that I understand the issues. I really love construction. I really appreciate building design and architect. I'm all about community development, and I know that when you're considering developments like this, you probably hear more negative comments than positive ones. And I do have some constructive criticism to provide here, so I appreciate the opportunity to share some of those with you. And I've got some notes here. I'm going to try to stay on topic and be concise here.
Thank you. We all appreciate that.
I appreciate the comprehensive plan. I've read it. I've known for many, many years that this particular parcel was zoned R4. I know what that means. And I too, like the previous speaker, I appreciate multifamily housing. I appreciate diversity, and I have no qualms about multifamily being put up in that particular parcel. But I do have some concerns about the design of it, and I have some concerns that it doesn't meet the spirit of the requirements that are laid out in our city ordinances for planned unit developments, and I just want to share some of those with you. So I'm sure that all of you know these statutes way better than I do, but City Ordinance 9.133, it specifically states that PUD approval is not to just simply avoid the requirements of the statutes for the underlying zoned. The purpose is to, and I quote, to achieve a higher quality of design, efficiency, and technology. That's the lens that we should be viewing this development through. And when I look at this proposed development, it doesn't meet the character, the space, the character of the residential surrounding around it. The design itself lacks character, it lacks personality, and it's just very big for the site. And I understand that design appeal is somewhat subjective, right? But there are some objective criteria that folks can agree on when they're looking at a development and how it fits into the character of the neighborhood. And with no disrespect to the planner and the architect, I love those trades as well. But it looks like this design was designed for a different area and just kind of plopped into this particular space. So it just doesn't feel like Columbia Heights, doesn't feel like 42nd and Jackson Street. And frankly, when I looked at that particular picture that Ms. Hark just scrolled through there that shows my house on the left and the building across the street, when I first saw that, it took my breath away. I couldn't believe that the city would even consider a building of that height. And here's why. So the particular underlying R4 zoning right now, I mean, the PUD application, it's designed to give some wiggle room to height restrictions. The R4 height restriction is 35 feet. This particular building, if I might not be quoting exactly, I think it's 45 3/4 feet. So that's a solid 10 feet above the minimum requirements. And the purpose.
You didn't mean to say minimum requirements. It's
maximum
maximum
requirements,
requirements,
yes.
thank you, yeah.
Yeah, so, and yeah, I understand the developer's response to an answer at the earlier meeting that it's the same height as the Crestview building, but the Crestview building's like, I don't know, what, 200 yards away from the residential houses on Jackson Street, and it actually goes up a hill. You can see the hill there on the street there. So I don't know that that's a fair comparison. And in addition, when you think about a 35-foot height requirement, the purpose of being allowed to go over a 35-foot requirement is not to just add another story, but it's to add to the design, the character of the design. So maybe you have a 35-foot building and you need to add a little more to get a dormer up there. But this design doesn't do that. it seems like the design is to just get more bodies into that space, and rather than to add to the aesthetic design, the appeal, and the character of the development. So it kind of feels like a bait and switch, you know? I've known for 20 years that eventually there was going to be a building put in there. And I don't have any qualms about there being a building there, but this particular design just doesn't really seem to fit into the character. So I want to get off that point. I've got a concern that the developer and the city have not yet given adequate consideration to the concerns and the issues raised by the community members at the earlier meeting. And one concern that I do have is a technical violation, and maybe you know the statutes better than I, but I think the city violated the notice ordinance for the neighborhood meeting, and here's why. So, yes, the city provided notice to homeowners in the area, but the PUD application notice requirements for the initial meeting requires not just notice be given to homeowners, but also homeowners and tenants. And we know for sure that all of the tenants at the townhome development at the corner of Central and 41st didn't receive notice, okay? So it might be splitting hairs, might be technical, I don't want to be litigious, but I think the notice requirement was violated for that initial neighborhood meeting. And that's a concern. So
Pat, make sure you're speaking into the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Yeah. So I think I've said enough about that. But notwithstanding the purpose of the notice or the adequacy of that notice, but a lot of concerns were raised by residents. The height, I discussed that already. I don't know where there are any other four-story apartment buildings in Columbia Heights. There may be one, but I've looked, I haven't seen one. And so this is very unique in that respect. There were concerns about density. There were concerns about site layout. Why couldn't the building be turned a little bit on its site so that the parking lot was in a different position? There was concern about traffic congestion, pedestrian safety, pedestrians crossing Central Avenue to get up to the park at the top of the hill. It doesn't appear that there's been a traffic study done yet, or any considerations for how traffic controls might be altered to fit into the design. And now with the unveiling of the new project a little bit further north, that could add some additional concerns. Another big concern is that, I understand that there's some development concerns regarding, or some considerations that need to be taken into account for the stormwater drainage issue, right? Whoever develops there is going to have to foot the bill for some portion of some remediation there to address those concerns. We've just now learned, this was new information to me, appreciate learning about it, but that the other development will share some of those costs. And at the neighborhood meeting, I heard the developer say that one of the reasons they had to make the building as big as it is because they needed to make it balance economically to address or provide some relief for the money that they would have to invest into remediating the drainage issues. Now, if there's another party helping to share that cost, why does the build, you know, I'm curious if that economic concern has been alleviated somewhat. And I know that economics isn't a consideration that you look at, but it certainly is a consideration for the type of developers that might be attracted to that particular parcel. Another thing that I want to bring up is that I believe, and again, you might know more about these ordinances than I do, but I think that the current plan, it violates the city ordinance for lot area. And here's why. So the city planner's report and recommendation to your commission, it suggests and it cites that this development meets the requirement of City Ordinance 9.109 subsection C for, quote, minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet for a multifamily dwelling in an R4 district, which is a fact. It does. It's, if I remember right, it's 56,628 square feet. So it's definitely at least 10,000 feet big. But that ordinance goes on to propose a calculation or specify a calculation that requires the lot area acre per dwelling unit calculation. And it requires the lot area to be 1,000 square feet for each one-bedroom unit, 1,200 square feet for each two-bedroom unit, and 1,500 square feet for each three-bedroom unit. So by my calculations, the building that the developer is proposing requires 73,600 square feet. And the application indicates that the site is 56,628 square feet. So I think the application and the city's findings of fact, well, they don't contain any reference to that additional calculation. So another technical thing that I think is worthy to note. Just a couple
I'm sorry, I'm going to back up because I'm not really sure I understand what you're saying there. So you're saying that by one definition, the building is 10,000 square feet too large. Is that correct?
No.
It's too, okay. Then help me understand what you're saying there.
So the statute says there's a two-prong test for site area. The first prong is that any multifamily housing development must have at least 10,000 square foot. The lot must be a minimum of 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
And we meet that prong.
Sure.
And then the second is, if it's a multifamily housing, here's how we calculate what the minimum area is.
Okay, so you're saying for the size right now, the minimum area should be, did you say 76,000?
73,000.
73,000, and it's actually
600
56, so
square
it's a little bit, so you're saying that it's, trying to do the math, 17,000 square feet too small?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So a couple of other points, and I'll continue to try to move quickly here. But
Thank you.
But multifamily housing and even high density housing and good architectural building design that fits the neighborhood, they're not mutually exclusive, right? We can have good design, appealing design, attractive design that fits the character, for instance, the design could include some roof dormers. The design could include some false dormers. The design could include some different setbacks that just give more aesthetic appeal. The residents also brought up privacy issues and visibility issues. And I understand that at the city meeting, the city staff, the developer, and the architect did a good job of answering the questions, but they didn't. It doesn't seem like since then any additional consideration is being given to the issues. There's a difference between just, answering the technical questions and giving consideration or giving pause to consider the impact of some of those issues. Another concern that I've got is that the city, it just doesn't seem like it's invested sufficient effort into seeking alternative development proposals. I understand that this particular developer has put forth this one, and it works for them economically, But the city, to my understanding, has never marketed this parcel and asked for competing development bids. So it's really pure speculation on whether or not other developers might put forth other development plans that fit better and that benefit the city more, whether it's economically or whatnot. So I think that warrants consideration. And it's a pretty low and inexpensive hurdle for the city to meet. Last thing that I want to say. The process, I know that you're not here to change the process, but it seems a little bit outdated. Might be a stretch to say it's completely broken, but in today's climate, we give a lot of consideration to the harmony of a community, the input of all the diverse parties, the homeowners, the tenants. We listen to people, we respect their input, and this just seems to be, it just seems like it's kind of came on fast. I know that you can't pause everything and say, hey, let's get input on the color of the flowers and get input on every little detail. But there's some big picture concerns here that I think warrants a little bit of a pause to consider the input, build the input into the design. So finally here, I know that you as a body, your goal is to make a recommendation to the council. I respectfully request that you recommend that the city council deny the application, or in the alternative, request that the city council pump the brakes a little bit on this to give adequate pause for some of these concerns to be addressed and create some more harmony with the community for the development of this particular parcel. So recommend denying it or delaying the vote on it to give adequate time to consider other alternatives. So with that,
Thank you for your
I'm out of
input, sir.
breath. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this matter? If you'd please come up to the podium. State your name and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Randall Boyum. My address is 4156 Jackson Street Northeast, right at the corner across the street from this building, proposed building. My concern is the height of the building, the location of the building. Can't it be back or? I understand the house on the corner there is 30, it's not a house, I guess it's the residence center, is 35 feet high. This is 10 feet higher. It's 20 feet from my house, and when I walk out, it's going to be shading my house in the morning. And I'm concerned about the increased traffic in that area. It's my understanding there's parking stalls, 108 parking stalls for this. What is the occupancy of the building? Is 108 parking stalls enough for the number of occupants in the building? Where are they going to park? And the traffic exiting the underground parking on Jackson Street. I mean, how would you like it with a building like this in front of your house?
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, thank you.
all I need to say.
And I'm by the way, I am making notes. I do want to address the issues that have been raised by everyone here, so I'm not going to answer your questions as you come up to the podium, and I'm not the one to answer the questions anyway. So, but please, anybody else would like to come up and state their opinions and thoughts, please do so.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin Johansen, and I live at 4208 Jackson Street. I'm also speaking on behalf of our neighbors at 4204 Jackson Street as well. So I'd like to draw our attention to the 2040 plans that the city staff has brought up multiple times in their findings and their decisions.
You're talking about the comprehensive plan
Yes, sir.
for the city of Columbia Heights?
Yep, that's precisely it.
Thank you.
So what really I want to draw our attention to is on Chapter 3, page 27. One of the first goals that is set forth by this comprehensive plan is to establish and maintain a strong sense of community. That's something that we have. The next goal, again on page 27 of Chapter 3, is to strengthen the identity and the image of the community as a desirable place to live, work, and play, which is something, again, that's very tangible as it is right now. And furthermore, on page 30, chapter 3, page 30, there's a subpoint for that second goal, and it says to provide opportunities for growth and development throughout the city while retaining the community's small town character. So one of the major issues that our community has brought up is that this building does not fit the character of our neighborhood, the character of our single-family homes, the character of our identity as a community. Because what we love about our community is the fact that as of right now, we have low traffic, we're safe, we don't have to we don't have to watch our kids every 2 seconds. There's a lot of us families that have very young kids, 3 years and younger, that play outside all the time. The traffic is a very, very big concern for us because now we don't just have one project on Jackson Street. On the Hy-Vee property that's being evaluated right now is going to potentially add another not 400 to 600 people. The proposal was for 400 to 600 units, which the minimum amount, according to what this particular parcel says, you can have up to 4 occupants per 1 bedroom. So if we do the math, with both of these projects going forth, we're sandwiched in with a potential 1,300 plus people that are going to be coming in and out at all times of the day, regardless of what they work, where they work, and what's going on. So to continue on with the 2040 comprehensive plan, I want to draw our attention to Chapter 3, page 31, which specifies a goal to promote the safety of residents and ensure a safe environment for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other vulnerable roadway users. On Jackson Street, we do have a household that is blind. We have another household that has someone with special needs. So we do have people that fall into this category. Under that goal, which the building plan doesn't address, is the lighting for the area is not going to be adequate. So the lighting that's proposed by this building is going to be specifically for the parking lot. It's not addressing adequate lighting for pedestrian traffic on the sidewalk and at the cross streets where people are going to be crossing the streets. So it's not going to be safe when you have increased traffic for kids, anyone else, if drivers can't see. Traffic is already an issue because people are distracted. Being here at home for over a year with COVID, you see drivers every single day on their phone, every single day not slowing down for the stop signs.
Sir, I understand that that's an issue. We're not going to solve that problem right here, right now. So we got a lot of people we want to get through. I appreciate your concerns. Let's keep moving if you can. Or at least come to the point of that. I mean, I understand, obviously you mentioned traffic a couple times. I'm not trying to cut you off. I want to make sure you're heard, but let's try to stay focused if we can.
So let's stay focused and let's get a traffic study actually done and put a halt on this for another 60 days to get proper studies completed.
Okay, good. Thank you. Is there anybody else here? Please come right on up. We want to hear from everybody who wants to talk. Hello, could you please state your name and address?
I'm Barb Schomer. I live on the corner of 41st and Quincy, down from the fire station. And my concerns are neighborhood livability. I have the corner with the sidewalk, and we have, all day long, I meet neighbors. They're walking their dogs, taking their small kids for a walk. And it's a northbound one-way, Quincy is. I'm not sure how far, but for sure between 40th and 42nd. It's a northbound one-way.
Sounds right.
So given the proposed where this apartment building would go, well, they can't go through the fire station. They would be coming my way. All coming down Quincy. So, little kids, I cringe all the time anyway, because there's just the stop sign one way, that other direction, they don't stop. There's I'm on the kitty corner from Immaculate School, and those kids jog twice a day. Different, and there's not always an adult with each child. But anyway, so that's my safety concern. The other concern is just high density doesn't seem to fit the neighborhood I know. I've been in that house for 30 years. And, we have owner-occupied homes. And all of a sudden, we're going to, plunk this. It just doesn't seem like it's Columbia Heights to me. Like, we're going to change the character.
What does that mean to you? Does that mean it needs to be smaller? Does that mean it needs to be different? It means to not be low income? Or what does that mean to you?
Well, less. Just considerably less. And I've heard, the rumors of the 400 unit. Oh, no. No, absolutely. But even, the 60 unit seems like, well, there goes my nice little sleepy neighborhood, as people have said. The character, we're kind of tucked in, just outside Northeast. Northeast is like a zoo now. It's like the character there.
We all live here, we know.
Well, I don't want that to happen to us.
Yep.
Let's just renters don't have an investment in where they live. We do. And that's what I want to hold on to.
Unfortunately, we're not allowed to really look at that particular thing that you just said. We can't say no renters. We're not allowed to do that. It's against the law. It's against the law.
Masses of them then, okay. The density, I guess, is the...
All right.
All right, I think that was my few little bullet points.
Well, thank you for sharing them. We
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank
Is there anyone
you.
else here who would like to speak now? All right. I don't see anybody with their hands up or who wants to speak. Is there anybody on Zoom who would like to speak on this issue? Please, I don't know if we want to... It looks like we've got a couple people who've submitted some questions. I can't quite read that, so somebody who can read that, maybe help me out.
I know we have Sarah Fallon that would like to speak on Zoom. Sarah, feel free to unmute yourself and you can begin expressing your comments and concerns.
Hi, I just, fair warning, we have lots of children here, and they may make a lot of noise in the background. Okay, so I just had a question about the traffic study, and will this be done prior to any further movement on this? Because, again, the traffic I know has been brought up multiple times, but as I said, we do have very small children, and I have a loved one that lives with us with disabilities, and safety is really paramount to my household. So I'm looking for a traffic study to be done, and like I don't know if we have much say in this going forward or not, but if this does move forward, I would request the city consider doing large speed bumps. And then also have permit parking for the residents that currently live here, because I also am aligned with people that have said about the parking. There's no way that parking will probably cover everyone that wants to come and visit or possibly maybe living in these homes. And I don't want our parking to essentially be taken away from the streets and stuff. So that is my concern. And then if there's a possibility of like mirroring this, right now it's on the northeast corner of the lot, could it be switched to the southeast, which is closer to central in my mind? If you're wanting to try to be on this transit oriented, that it feels like it would make more sense to have it on the southeast corner, which is closer to the safer pedestrian walkway from the bus line. 42nd has a bus stop for people coming back from the cities, but it is extremely unsafe. So I don't know if the city has considered that safety of the pedestrians that would be crossing there. Again, extremely unsafe to cross at 42nd. I can't even turn left. And would there be a light on 42nd and Jackson? I'm sorry, 42nd and Central, with everything that's like the proposed new Hy-Vee development along with this one.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Great. Is there Minerva, is there anyone else that's?
I believe Monica S. would like to speak via Zoom. Monica, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and express your concerns and comments.
Could you get your addresses too?
Yes, please.
And Monica, please state your address for the record.
My address is 4136 Jackson Street, so my house would literally be right across from the entry exit for the underground parking, and that concerns me a lot for the traffic. It concerns me for all the houses on my street that have children, so echoing a lot of what the last speaker said, that it doesn't seem to make sense to be having the exit, exactly that ramp right there at that portion. That's also where our police force does enter and exit. They utilize that space for beginning and ending their shifts. So to me, it would make more sense to move that parking ramp to 42nd. It just doesn't seem very safe or viable to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
What last question is there are building that building at the corner of 40th and Central. Is that not also an apartment complex that's going up?
I don't know if you want to just quickly address
Yeah,
that.
that's
This
an
is
easy
not
one.
really relevant, but go ahead.
Yes, that's apartments in conjunction with the new city hall and a small retail commercial space.
Okay.
And to say it's not relevant, it is though, because to build too many apartments and then you also have empty apartments.
Thank you for the correction. I think you're absolutely right.
Before we move forward, I did want to read some comments that came in via Zoom. I hope everyone can hear me both online and in person. Amy Waller would like to said that Pat was our first public speaker or second public speaker, that he was speaking on behalf of many of the attendees here, and that was seconded by Kelsey Johansen and Sarah Fallon as well. And then we had some audio issues. Christopher did not receive a notice. Monica stated, who is the road commissioner member that is dismissive of everyone's concerns, he needs to be removed from his position. Stephanie stated, we noticed an increase in traffic going down Quincy the wrong way since COVID. Carol said the proposed building doesn't fit the neighborhood. Stephanie asks, how will the increased use of the sewers and roads from the project be paid for in the future? Amy Waller states, my child care has to leave, so I will be unable to speak via Zoom, but would someone please send me the comments? Please read my comments. My name is Amy Waller and I live at 4201 Quincy. I would like to request that in addition to Pat and Ben's and Sarah's comments, which I won't waste your time repeating, I would like to again request that you consider completing a traffic study prior to making a decision on this project. And if it is to proceed, to please consider traffic and speed mitigation strategies at a minimum speed bumps. I live on 42nd and Quincy and watch people speed through the stop signs many times per day, as well as try to pass each other on high speeds while skipping the stop signs. Increasing the traffic through here is an important issue to consider, and I disagree with the developer's statement that it will have minimal impact with no evidence to support that. Please consider speed bumps and please address the issue of pedestrian safety crossing Central and 42nd and increased traffic waiting to cross Central on 42nd. Stephanie gave an example, long-term flooding, road maintenance needs, and Carol asks, will my taxes go up to pay for sewer or drainage fixes?
Excellent.
Commissioners would like to address any of these or would like to.
So now, well, before we do that, we're gonna see if there's anybody else who'd like to speak at the public hearing, because now's your time. Yep, please.
It looks like Kelly Harrison, sorry. We have one more Zoom.
One more Zoom person. Very good.
Kelly Harrison, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Hi there. I'm actually the blind homeowner that was mentioned earlier today. I just would like to express concerns about the discussion about the floodwaters and the concerns about the sewage. 6 weeks after I purchased my home, we had a water incident where we had a lot of rain and ended up with 2,000 gallons of water in my basement. And while we have a sewer switch, I didn't know at the time what it was for. I do now. Since then, they've done some work on the Jackson Pond, but I don't feel that the work that was done on Jackson Pond was done with the idea that they would add all of these apartments. And so my concerns are, no matter how things go forward, all of these sewage issues have to be addressed because the system at this point is so fragile and it wouldn't take much to put us back where we were, where we had flooding incidents every time it rains. Water goes downhill and it is very low right here. I've kind of decided the next home I buy will definitely be at the top of a hill, not at the bottom. So that's the concerns that I have. Of course, I'm concerned about the traffic and what we're going to do. Right now, we hear all the time about people who dart across Central Avenue to get over to the 43rd. And so if you're going to add more traffic to an already pretty crowded situation, dangerous situation, something will have to be done to redirect and figure all of that out. So those are my concerns actually with the drainage and the sewage issues.
Okay, thank you very much for your concerns. We appreciate it.
And then, sorry, before moving forward, we did also receive more comments via chat. Greg Prommel says, I live a block away. This is the first time I've heard of this proposal today. Somebody ran up to my house with a notice for this meeting today. And Carol states, I'm against this project.
Great. And is there, if anybody, if you're going to come back for the second time, that's fine. I'm welcome. There's been a lot that's happening. Please go ahead and do that, but let's please keep it brief.
My name is Ben Johansen, and I'd like to follow up with the 2040 comprehensive plan to also specify that the city in Chapter 3, page 31, has made a commitment to provide accessible and safe pedestrian connections to destination points throughout the community. So Central and 42nd is one of those. And then also address problem intersections when nearby development occurs. And so this is a redevelopment that's occurring. And so the city has promised us, the residents, that problem intersections will be addressed. So I would like to end with that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ben. And we'll end where we started.
Yeah, very briefly, John Haluska, 4228 Jackson. One of the things that weren't covered, I believe, in any of the comments was the lack of playground or green space around that proposed building. 62 units, family. It's going to be a lot of kids, right? So where are they going to go? What are they going to do? So I think that's one of the main considerations that has to be dealt with in anything that goes there in terms of multifamily. It's got to provide adequate green space and outside space for the kids for recreation. So.
Okay, good. Thank you, John. Okay. All right, very good. At this point, we're going to close the public hearing. Public hearing, I'm sorry, is there there's one more thing? Sorry, Minerva, go ahead. Yep.
Did anyone else on Zoom wish to speak? Feel free to unmute yourself and speak for us, please.
Hi.
Go ahead, please state your name and your address.
Dan Shadeen, 4213 Van Buren Street.
Thank you, Dan.
My concern, basically same thing with everybody. Doesn't fit the neighborhood. Traffic. It is horrid trying to get on Central anywhere on this road. Something's got to be done with that for sure. I'm a northern boy, grew up in a very small town. Everybody asks me, how do you live in the city? It's this neighborhood. It's small, it's quiet, it's peaceful. I see that changing real fast. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other speakers on Zoom?
I would like to speak. I live at 4208 Jackson Street, and I'm concerned that if this goes through, like everyone else, about traffic, but also if all of the proposed construction goes through up at the old Hy-Vee lot, getting, like has been mentioned, getting on the Central from anywhere is a nightmare. And I'm just wondering if we're going to have stoplights at every intersection at Central, or shut off access to Central from different blocks. But I think, again, not just the traffic study done for 42nd and Jackson, but all of Central with all of these proposed projects. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
And then some written comments that we received that we have yet to read. Monica S., I'm concerned that if this project goes through, that the construction, traffic, and noise would be very detrimental to the surrounding houses. And Carol states that John has been sharing my concerns.
Good. All right. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all your comments. We do appreciate it. We are listening. We're not here to answer your questions. That's for the city staff and the developer. But we're trying to work together here. And obviously, there were a lot of concerns. I am now officially closing the public hearing without objection. Public hearing is now closed. And I think the one thing that I think everybody in the room wants to hear about is the traffic. So let's talk about that, please. We had a lot of comments about that. I really want to know what's the city planning on doing on this.
Sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the community. It's a lot to unpack, but we'll try.
Good.
So the city's conversations around traffic study, of course, included the city engineer in giving an assessment of what staff thought was appropriate. And we looked at past history of the site as one of the prominent driving factors to not require it at this juncture in the project. I think there's a lot of concern percolating, and we should talk this through. But traffic volume in particular was waged against the historic volumes with the high school and the technical college that had 500 parking stalls and a student population of 600 to 1,000 students, daily coming and going, and that closed in the early 2000s. So there's a very recent example of volume. People found a way to get in and out of that with the existing road network, and that was an assessment of volume made by staff. So road maintenance has come up in the traffic study. I think these roads are going to be maintained on the same schedule as any other road in the city and paid for, although not part of this analysis, through property taxes, like any other project, and assessments when required are mandatory. This project, of course, adds to the tax base and would pay its fair share and contribute to that system. So broader corridor studies related to Central Avenue are underway and being discussed right now for how we can partner with MnDOT to address a lot of these big picture concerns that have plagued the city getting onto Central. It expands beyond this project and this site. And I think there will be improvements forthcoming, both to the pedestrian safety and ease of moving in and out of the Central Avenue corridor. But that's a partnership with MnDOT. It's a much bigger picture conversation that is taking place right now. There's a lot of emphasis on this corridor for bus rapid transit and making it a corridor that is accommodating for all modes, but at the same time increasing and acknowledging that capacity is increasing along Central Avenue. Stoplights proposed, there are none right now. I think those would be born out of that analysis that's completed, at a later date, and with heavy influence on MnDOT. They control that right of way. We can participate in those conversations, but very much being driven by MnDOT. Speed,
and I'm sorry, I want to just hit that point because I'm not sure that's something. Certainly, before I was on this commission, I had no idea that's how this thing worked. Different roads are controlled by different bodies. The city controls some, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron. The city controls some of them. The county controls some of them. The state controls some of them. And if you get up to, into Fridley, you've got the federal government that controls some of them as well. So we can't control everything as far as traffic goes, and we are subject to the rules and regulations. And this is kind of a question. I want you to confirm this. We're subject to the rules and regulations of the state of Minnesota and all those other bodies that are higher up the food chain than we are. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I want everybody to kind of keep that in mind, that we are not alone in this. We can't solve this problem ourselves. We have to partner with other bodies.
As it relates to speed bumps, I don't know that we have any in the city. That's probably something that has not been supported in the past by our Public Works Department. I don't think that would be born out of a traffic study, so I don't want to give hope.
There's a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're right. In general, you're right.
A pretty rare type of calming measure for this type of situation. Staff viewed it as an overall decrease in density in comparison to the historical context. So I know when you get used to a vacant lot and the standard is, I don't want any new traffic issues, we can't deliver on that. There's going to be increased vehicle traffic for any development on the site. So we're trying to examine how has it functioned in the past and what can we do to mitigate these concerns to the best of our ability, but never promise anyone that there'll be an increase, with any development. So a traffic study would not eliminate more cars from coming into this site. And that was the calculus by city staff. I think we could ask the developer. I know we've had lots of conversations because they heard those concerns in the public meeting, and I know they're amenable to exploring a traffic study. It certainly isn't going to drive it at a lot of these other issues that we need to unpack, but I think it should be open to conversation and consideration with the developer.
But it certainly would. It certainly may address the concerns that every single neighbor that we've heard tonight have. I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't think that the traffic's going to be a huge change that the people that are sitting in this room, the people that are on Zoom right now, are going to have to deal with on a personal level. It's one thing for us to sit up here and say, yeah, that's too bad. But they got to deal with it on a daily level, and I think it's certainly for a project this big, it is appropriate in my opinion. I don't speak for the whole commission by any means, but it's certainly appropriate to do everything we can to address those what I feel are legitimate concerns. So, and I certainly appreciate your position, Aaron, but I think if the developer is still here, it might benefit them to consider meeting the neighbors halfway on this one. So let's I'm just going to kind of tick through the list here because there's a lot of issues that were raised, and I want you to at least have a chance to respond. Talk. I know you spoke a little bit about the water and the drainage system. Explain exactly what the plan is and how that's going to be enforced and how we make sure that really does happen.
So the first, I think, gentleman was concerned that we weren't considering it at all or that it wasn't being accounted for, and that is inaccurate. The study is being completed right now. We do know there's an existing issue, so there's an issue that needs to be solved for this project and projects to the north, regardless of what happens on either site. That's the basis. So we start there by understanding what are the current conditions, how can we fix that. Then we do an analysis of how densities in these two projects that are being proposed contribute to that, and design the upgrades or improvements that are required to accommodate everything. Construction on either project would be conditioned and not be able to start until that problem is solved, under contract, financed, and ready to go, and completed ahead of these projects. So very much aware, and I think it's important to know that these two projects, and it's hard to unpack the two because now the other one's out in the open and it all contributes. But both of these provide the city an opportunity to finally address this fully. So we've been putting Band-Aid repairs on the sewer system and the stormwater infrastructure to improve it. It is fragile, like the comments from the lady that had the sewer backup of the 2,000 gallons. It is at a point where it can't take any additional capacity. So it has to be fixed in its present state. And the city is now happy about the opportunity with the economics of a project, particularly not this one, but the one to the north, to build that into that development so that it can be borne by that development and not distributed across all of the residents, that are currently living in the area. It can be most heavily paid for. There will be a cost sharing that isn't for the developer. They're responsible for what they're adding, but most of the cost will be assigned to that development project. And it's an opportunity to alleviate a long-standing issue and actually fix it. So I hope that answers it. But again, conditioned on, and it's listed in the conditions that are before you this evening, that those agreements have to be contractually executed before a building permit would be issued for this project.
And at the risk of repeating it too many times, and pardon me if I am, so you're saying it has to be done before any building can get started. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I was wondering. Let's talk a little bit about the height requirements, if you could. There was one comment, at least, that the building is abnormally high and actually doesn't meet our code.
Right. So I'd let Minerva jump in too, but the planned unit development approach would allow or afford that as a flexibility in this case. I apologize if it wasn't articulated clearly in the staff report, but it is something. You take the underlying R4 standards, and that's your basis for comparison for multifamily in this case. Deviations from that are what would be considered a PUD flexibility. So it could be approved under that consideration, the higher building.
All right. I'm not sure if that means it should be approved,
Right.
but
Could be.
It certainly could be approved, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Minerva, did you have something to add to that? No. Okay.
No, just echoing what Aaron said.
Thank you. Do you have any comments on the lot area size? The lot is not...
Same standard would apply, Mr. Chair. Could be afforded as a PUD flexibility, but not required.
Okay, thank you. Any concerns about the parking, the number of parking stalls that are on the lot right now?
Yeah.
I know that was something that you detailed out, but go ahead.
This is on. Sorry. So the calculations as depicted in the code currently, and this is based on bedrooms in each unit. So unit types. So one bedroom, one parking space is needed. 2 bedrooms or more is only 2 parking spaces needed. Similar to a home in which a single family home is only required 2 on-site parking spaces. So that's just kind of to put things into perspective. Mm-hmm. With that calculation for the units, there's 124 bedrooms proposed in this project. However, the unit count is 16 one-bedroom, 32 bedroom, and 16 three-bedroom. And with that, we've calculated only 180 parking spaces are needed, and that is exactly what the applicant has provided. Guests coming would be similar to single-family home as on-street parking, but the applicant has provided the minimum required number for on-site parking. Other multifamily developments through the PUD process ask for a flexibility in that number. I'm familiar with 40th and Central proposal that's been approved. They have less parking than the calculation that we've done for the purposes of bedroom count. They are meeting the minimum, so they're not cutting anyone short of parking spaces here based on the municipal code.
Could I clarify? Did you say 108 or 180? I'm confusing the
Sorry,
two numbers.
108 parking spaces.
108.
108.
Thank you, Mark. And by the way, we'll have questions from all the commissioners before we're through here. So rest assured, if I don't hit your issue, I want to make sure you guys as well. Any consideration of the location on the lot, where and explain to us why the building is where it is, and what considerations were made to put it there. If we could have the people on Zoom could mute yourself, we sure would appreciate it.
We can mute them.
Maybe we can just hit mute all, or
Alicia can
mute everybody
you're
except
doing
Tom.
right now. Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry, Aaron and Minerva. Please continue.
No, that's okay. So I think a little bit of historical context will help that conversation. So how the city arrived at a PUD concept to begin with, I think, is part of that. So this concept was derived after several engagements with the developer and the city council over the last 18 months. Reuter Walton coming to the city looking for an affordable housing development site, and SECA looking for an opportunity to relocate their facilities. Yeah. The city council viewed this site as a place where those two concepts could merge and integrate. It was consistent with the core principles of the transit-oriented development guidelines in the comprehensive plan, which calls for horizontal or vertical mixed-use integration with retail, commercial, and high-density multifamily. Mm-hmm. So that was the nexus of this arrangement. And from there, you have challenges, obviously, with the space that drove the building a little bit closer to the corner than what the base R4 standards would call for. Outside of the setback considerations, one of the guiding principles with development in the city is to hold the corner and push buildings, up to the street face. Because it's more desirous to have the surface parking tucked in behind the building for aesthetic reasons. So it's consistent with that guiding principle from an architectural perspective. So yeah, it is a tight site. I think the PUD component makes it such, but it was a value assessment by the city council for their property that they owned, wanting to integrate these sites and directing staff to make it work. If it was a traditional R4 proposal, just Reuter Walton, there'd be more room to spread out and do some of the things that are being addressed here. But it's fair to examine and explore why the PUD is even being considered. Because with the underlying zoning, it could be just a straight housing proposal. Uh-huh. And that's the primary driver of positioning, location of buildings, putting the housing against housing and the commercial in between these two other housing uses. And the commercial use, our public safety building is more similar to a commercial use than residential, certainly.
That's right. Yeah, good. All right, thank you. I guess maybe the last thing that I'll touch on before we ask the commissioners to add their parts here is, do you have any concern? Now, obviously, the safety of pedestrians is kind of what I'm addressing here, and I want to make sure that I want to understand what thought has been put into that and what challenges you may have considered, and talk to us a little bit about that.
I'd also like to lean in on the architects that are part of the project, but the sidewalk network in the vicinity to this project site is accommodating of pedestrian movements. We all know that once you get to Central Avenue, it's a totally different story. Crossing Central Avenue, in many cases, you take your hands in, your life in your own hands, especially when it's not signaled. I think those improvements are forthcoming and downstream along Central Avenue corridor. But I do believe that pedestrians can move in and out of this site as it stands with the sidewalk network and as we design the SACA facility, pedestrian accommodations will have to be taken into consideration for that. And how does this site integrate with their building, sidewalk network, et cetera? Stop signs might be warranted, at these critical intersections for traffic calming. It sounds like we have people blowing through them as it is. I think that's an enforcement with the police department consideration. We're pretty close to the police department here. So I think there are ways that we can certainly slow things down. But just the core pedestrian elements are really how they're moving around this site, getting to sidewalks and moving through the neighborhoods. There'll be the potential for a future park just north with the city hall project that would allow residents here not to have to cross Central to get to LaBelle Pond Park, for example, because one of the concerns was access to recreation and how do we get kids to a park safely.
Absolutely.
I don't have any other comments about that.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Minerva, do you have any other comments on any of those issues? Great. Eric, let's start with you. Do you have any questions or comments at this point for city staff or for the developer?
Not at this moment.
Great.
Maybe for-
I guess, but yeah, let's just go through that right now. Go ahead. Yep.
I guess one question is, I see it's got some underground parking. Is that to be included in the rent, or is that something they're gonna have to purchase after to get spots, because we know how well that didn't work?
Commissioner Novitsky, thank you. So through the negotiations and considerations of the city council, that was a primary deal point where the council wanted to ensure that residents were utilizing the underground parking, because we've had facilities in the city, Grand Central Flats, recently built, where the residents weren't using the underground parking because it was an additional cost to their rent, and they were making the budget choice to try and find parking elsewhere. So that was a driver for the city council, and made sure that they worked with Reuter Walton so that the contracts between the city and Reuter Walton would dictate that they have to build the underground parking into the rent rolls so that it's not a separate cost, and force use of that for these residents, so we don't have a vacant underground parking facility driving issues into the surrounding neighborhood.
Yep. And to my knowledge, I believe there's other proposals for this property, with like some fourplexes or that, so this isn't the only one that's ever came up, correct?
In my history with the city, I am not aware of fourplexes. Commissioner Novitsky, the most recent proposal that had traction that I'm aware of, 2018, Thor Development was looking at the site in negotiations with city for an apartment project that they called workforce housing that was of a slightly higher density than this and scope. So they failed to launch for a variety of reasons, but the city has entertained a couple of multifamily proposals in the past.
We've certainly never had anything in that spot come before us.
No, but
Yep.
I know there was talk before,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
it wasn't like this is the first project that was trying to come in here.
That's correct.
Great. All right. Thank you, Mike. You have anything else? No. Stan, what do you?
Yeah, I got the Rainbow site. Now, what's coming out of there? This is new, and it's got to be in conjunction with this, I would think, being only a block apart.
So slight deviation here, just because I don't want to get consumed on
No,
that.
I don't either, but-
Very fresh news. Last night, after, 6 months or more of work with staff and a proposed developer of that site, we were able to go public with the announcement that it's anticipated that, it's known that Hy-Vee's not interested in developing the site now, and have put it up for sale, and it's under contract with the city's development partner on the 40th and Central project. Actually was able to negotiate a deal and then approach the city for a partnership endeavor on that site. So it's in the very infant stages of.
It's going to be apartments.
Right now it includes vertical mixed use, commercial retail, beneath apartments on Central Avenue, a new city park, and then a low density to be determined single family component on the west end of the site.
Thank you.
So.
To be seen what that ends up being, right?
Well, we're at the very preliminary conceptual stages, but
So don't hold Aaron to any of this.
right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's will be constantly evolving and going through the entire process, but obviously an opportunity to revitalize a priority site for the city And again, the way it really correlates to this project is fixing a lot of the underlying utility issues that have plagued this region of the city for more than a decade. So,
Go ahead, Stan.
Okay, next, and I don't want to beat this food shelf down, but I just don't see a quarter acre doing anything for Seika, and so it looks like we're just putting a finger on a dike. Why don't you force the developer to buy the whole thing, and then they could make a dog park or a green area or more parking? And then the other thing is, I think it should be flipped 180 degrees, so you're not having a 4-story apartment building looking through my picture window.
Okay.
Have them face the nursing home and the police department.
So
there's probably
unpacking
nothing to be said
Well,
there.
right, the Seika.
Let's talk about two different issues.
I know.
The Seika consideration is difficult, obviously, because we don't have a fully vetted proposal. It's forthcoming. The policy decision to subdivide and create the potential ownership arrangement is a city council-driven decision, not planning commission and not staff. So from a desire to have them co-locate there, that is how we have gotten to this point. I would ask the developer to provide more comments on the building arrangement and how their thesis from an architectural and engineering standpoint, how it evolved.
Please, if the developer can comment on that, this is a great time to do that.
And then, Mr. Chair, I have a lot of questions too when you guys get, so we could go through.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Good.
Just so
For
we
the
don't
developer.
yeah.
Wonderful.
No, from the residents that I don't want to miss some of these.
Very good. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I hit the kind of the ones.
Yes.
I wrote down everything that was repeated.
Yep.
But if you have other ones, I absolutely would like you to address them. But
Thank you.
let's go back to the Seika plan.
Specifically, though, are we addressing why the building is laid out in proximity to the street, or why we've incorporated a Seika?
We're going to do both, so let's start with the Seika.
Okay. So for starters with Seika, that began back, as Aaron alluded to earlier, probably 18 months ago, we had some preliminary, call them work sessions with the city council. And one of the things we talked about was how to maximize the use on this site, what uses would make sense, what fit with comprehensive plan, all those kinds of things.
I might have you just lean in just a
sure.
little bit. Unfortunately, with the Zoom and all, you got to.
We are an apartment developer. That's what we do. We don't do other types of development. So we came with a proposal for apartments, and one of the strong suggestions from council was Seika is looking for a location to relocate. They have a food shelf and a thrift store. And would the developer be open to carving out, if you will, a piece of the parcel for that? And we said, we've always been conceptually in the 60 to 70 unit range for our proposal. And we said we can allow for a portion of the site to be dedicated to that. So from very early on, we worked on this plan that essentially had what you see on the screen, partially on the screen here, our proposal to the west and a future lot to the east for Seika. And so that's what we've had. That's what we kind of co-conceived at those earlier work sessions, and that's the path we've been working down. So that's how that came to be. I don't want to speak. I think there is a question in here of sort of, well, would we rather have the whole site or do something else? At this point, we've been holding weekly meetings with the Seika team as well on incorporating, making sure our proposals are complementary. There's potentially some shared parking, things like that we can provide. So I just want to be careful that we don't go too far astray from that during this discussion. But that's the background as to how we got here, and
And do you have any comments on Stan's, thoughts about the sites being? I mean, what is you've been in those meetings? Seika's not concerned about having too little space, or
not to your knowledge. Not to my knowledge. No, we carved out a parcel based on side discussions we'd had with them a long time ago. If they, not to my knowledge.
Okay, that's fine. I don't want you to commit yourself to something that you don't have firsthand knowledge of. But I think Stan's point may be quite valid,
and that's the way it is.
Well, and I think that's something that should probably be raised to the city council and make sure that they're, well, I'm gonna take a look at it. So Aaron, why don't you, thank you for, you might want to stay closer than
Yeah.
normal here, because we'll probably have,
absolutely.
I'm sure we'll have a couple more questions for you before we're done.
And certainly if I miss any, we can go back. But I took as many notes as I could keep up with. So, density, again, a common denominator with a lot of the concerns. So the city is looking at the comprehensive plan for guidance, transit-oriented development site, calls for densities that are significantly higher than what's being
So,
proposed
and
here.
you've mentioned this a couple times, and I want to make sure everybody understands what you're talking about. This is a transit-oriented development site. That's a special zone that we have along Central Avenue. Is that correct?
The comprehensive plan states essentially any site that's within a quarter mile of Central Avenue would be considered transit-oriented development.
Yep, and that was initiated. I was on the council then for the. If you guys are old, somebody I know John's old enough to remember. Kmart was there. That got torn down. That was our first transit-oriented site in Columbia Heights.
Right.
But go ahead.
And that's a really good example of where staff looked to lean in on conceptual plans was the Grand Central Flats development. It has many of the similar base characteristics. Its underlying zoning was mixed use. Mixed use has since been replaced with the planned unit development in our ordinance. So we went away from the mixed use designation because it wasn't hitting all of the right boxes, and we're looking for a little more flexibility, but a lot of the same characteristics. And we looked at Grand Central Flats as being consistent with the thesis of this project. You're a block off Central Avenue. You have a mix of all housing types. You have affordable housing. You have market rate condos, market rate twin homes, similar to what we have here. You don't have assisted living, but it was a mix of multifamily, low density, medium density, high density against existing single family and two family zone sites on Central Avenue that's directly adjacent to commercial. So you have all those same elements. Another example, and that is a 4-story building. That is one of the comments that came up, that there wasn't
Grand Central Lofts.
another 4-story example. That is a 4-story building.
I thought of that too. Yeah.
The other example is right across the way in Huset Park. That development is a mixed-use concept that has a lot of the same design standards. It might fall within the half-mile transit designation, but from a mixed-use perspective, it's got townhomes, multifamily, every density backed into commercial and industrial. So for significant redevelopment projects, we look to what have we done recently and what's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Those were two guiding sites that staff looked at to make an analysis of how does this one work? How do the puzzle pieces fit? Legends of Columbia Heights is also 4 or 5 stories. So another example of how that's integrated into a mixed density neighborhood. I'm just looking at my notes. So tenants receiving notice, I would challenge that by saying our notice is not required to go to every tenant. It is required to go to the owner. The notice that's mailed to the owner of the townhome development specifically states on there it's the responsibility of the property owner to notice all of the tenants if it's a multifamily facility. So we've gone over that, from time to time as a city, and the policy decision made by the council has been to continue that process rather than mail each individual tenant of a multifamily building their own notice under a renter situation. So I did want to address that process consideration.
So good people can disagree about that, and comments should be directed to the city council because they're the ones that actually made that policy decision.
So there were some comments about the cost of the stormwater improvements versus other types of housing. We did present some commentary at the neighborhood meeting about the ability to underground that stormwater pond is a significant cost, and a certain project and density being required to build that into the project cost. So that is a consideration from the city's perspective when they make a policy decision to sell property. So transcending just the land use and zoning, they are certainly taking that into account, what they can get for the site and what do we have to do to the site to prepare it for development in comparison to some of the lower density alternatives that could be placed on the site that couldn't bear that cost. let's see. Some comments about articulation in building, and I would allow the architects to speak to that. There were some changes that have been made to the facade of the building to try to address those concerns. They are slight, but we can point those out. Dormers was one suggestion that would conflict with our height considerations, I think, potentially, that we're also having. But there has, since that meeting, the developer and the architect have looked at ways that they could embellish the facade and bring more character. It's a very subjective, obviously, standard to assign value to, but they did at least hear that and try to alter it. So we discussed a little bit about alternative proposals and the city not going through traditional requests for proposals. The city has entertained proposals over the past decade or so, and again, this particular proposal was born out of a more organic relationship between the city council and the developer, coming and convening over a period of months to try to get to this point. Occupancy they can address, so we can try to understand how that correlates to parking. The maintaining of a small town character is difficult to quantify in this case and a subjective standard. We talked about pedestrian safety. We talked about traffic study. Permit parking on street. That it has not been a solution enacted by the city council to segregate on-street parking for any particular development. I know they do shy away from that. It would be something that would have to be addressed with the traffic commission and could be proposed by residents for any project that goes on this site. But the thesis of the on-street parking for the city has been it's for everyone. It isn't designated to what's in front of your house. There's no overnight parking, as we all know, on street. So to designate some of the adjacent as non-apartment parking would have to be addressed with the traffic commission and might not be feasible. We talked about the Central Avenue corridor studies, potential for stoplights, apartment vacancy rates. So in this case in particular, the vacancy rates throughout the city fluctuate widely depending on what building it is. The demand for affordable housing of this nature far outstrips the supply, and I know the developer can speak to this, but there's no lack of tenants that would be able to fill this building. Will taxes go up for sewer and drainage issues? I can't answer that specifically because we don't know the final calculus on, once the analysis is done, what's needed and who's eligible to be cost sharing. I don't want to give anybody any false assumptions. I can say that the developers of these projects will be responsible for their share of the upgrades. But we do have, again, an underlying issue. The city hasn't vetted all of the financing options. There's a lot of options available to us, but I can't rule out assessments that would go to fix the underlying base issues that are currently existing. However, those issues are much broader than just the homes that are feeling the impact. It's a collection district that is very large, so that at any rate it's spread over a variety of properties if there was ever any sort of assessment. We just have not had that conversation.
And that's a decision that the city council will
Right,
make on
right.
how they want to finance that. Which,
Indeed.
guess what? You guys all have a big impact with the city council. So if you want to impact what happens here, what happens in the future, maybe you've already done this, but write and call your city council members and let them know how you feel. Because that makes sure they will pay attention when a number of people, especially if you all say the same thing or something close. I'm not trying to give you advice on what to do, and I'm not here to preach, but that will have an impact if you talk to the city council. Aaron, please go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Winding down here, the last comment I think that we haven't already addressed, lack of playground and green space. I need the developer to address. There is a playground built into the facility, albeit small, but he can address how that relates to the urban context with developments that they're doing in other cities, as well as adjacent existing parks, LaBelle Pond, and then future parks to the north. So there's opportunities for green space and recreation for the residents and children in the immediate vicinity that need to be taken into consideration.
Very good. Great. Thank you for going through all those, Aaron. We certainly appreciate it. Do any of the commissioners have any more questions at this time? Mark, did you?
I'm just curious that there hasn't been one comment about electrical vehicle charging stations or the compatibility with solar integration with the new building.
Those conversations have not been part of the analysis. I would have to ask the developer to comment if they've vetted either option.
Come on, right up, please. Yeah.
So I can just say quickly on those. Starting with solar, so we make all of our buildings solar ready. So we design the roofs so that no matter if we actually end up installing solar panels or not, they can be installed in the future. On a building like this, we would certainly explore solar from the start, and if it would be a candidate, there are public funding, some public programs that provide for some financing for solar, so it's something we would look at. It is not in our plans currently other than to have the roof be solar ready, but it is something that we will continue to assess. And then regarding
But you're assessing that from a financial point of view, whether it makes sense to do that or continue to buy electricity.
That's correct.
Thank you. Yep.
And from an electric vehicle charging station, typically what in a building of this size, we would size maybe 1 or 2 electrical vehicle charging stations within the garage, and then provide enough electrical capacity to future-proof down the road. So, that's what I can.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for addressing that. Great.
I have a question for the developer.
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead.
Specifically as it relates to the design, and not the density of the project, I was quite moved by the second speaker. I think his name was Pat, who spoke, a nearby homeowner, talking about the design of this building as it relates to the single-family homes nearby. I am curious, what led you guys to this design as opposed to something that, whether it had dormers or more vertical variation or things that would make it feel more compatible with the adjacent single-family homes. And again, I'm not speaking about the density because I am happy to see, affordable housing come to our city and transit-oriented development in particular. But I can understand the homeowners nearby who question the look of this proposal in particular. So I'd like to ask what went into that decision, and if you could share what else might have been considered.
Sure. I'll start, but I'll ultimately turn it over to the architect on the design. One thing I do want to just talk about with affordable housing and the design of affordable housing is it does need to be designed very efficiently. The cost to build affordable housing is nearly identical to the cost to build high-end luxury market rate housing, whatever you want to call it. And there really aren't a lot of ways to do it much more efficiently other than to make sure that your design is incredibly efficient. And by that, I'm going to use the roof as an example. Pitched roof versus flat roof. There is an incredible amount of wasted attic space and things like that when you start constructing a pitched roof building. We have a flat roof here that provides for a much more efficient design. I understand that it does not look like the houses across the street, and it also doesn't look like the Crestview community directly to the east, but it is the nature of the efficiency of the building is incredibly important to making it feasible. Scott, if you could talk a little bit about some of the design elements you incorporated.
Good evening, Scott England of DJR Architecture. I'm the project architect on the project. And when we addressed the building, we recognized that it is in a single-family residential neighborhood to the east and to the west and to the north of us. And there's a certain kind of rhythm that happens with those single-family homes. There's a certain width for each of the properties. The houses are of a particular size and such. So as you see on the facade, there's vertical elements that are kind of replicating that rhythm as it's running down the face of the building. We wanted to provide something that was incredibly durable at the base of the building, which is why we have a brick base on it. This is Minnesota, and brick is going to last a long time. One of the things that Kyle really likes is no maintenance type of project as far as the exterior materials. So brick is one of those that's going to give you a really long-term use and such. The other materials on there, a variety of different siding materials, are basically done, once again, to break up the facade so it's not one continuous long facade that's all of the same color, all of the same texture and such. So it was actually addressing the kind of the rhythm of the single-family homes that are on the neighborhood.
Is the first floor walkout?
We don't have balconies. They are at grade, but we don't have balconies or patios.
Great, I mean, there's a sliding door for the first floor.
There is
Get
not.
outside. Is not, okay, thank you.
There is at the east end of the building, or the wing that's on 42nd, there's an entire section of the building that takes about 2 3-bedroom unit size. That's the manager's office, the lobby and the mailroom and such, but there's also 2 very large community rooms there. And both of those community rooms open up onto the green space that's just to the east of it there, which is also where the playground is located.
So this may be for both of you, and I just want to I'm going to try to bring it all together and kind of get a holistic kind of view. So what I'm kind of hearing is it has to be this big to be financially feasible, and it has to look the way it does because it's low-income housing, and it has to be more, and we have to keep it as efficient as possible. So what we end up with is kind of a giant box because it's efficient, it fits, and it kind of meets all the technical. I mean, I know that's kind of maybe shading it a little bit, but is that accurate, or is that am I overstating it?
I think what you're saying is there is accuracy in that. I don't want to sound closed off to the idea of exploring something that could.
Because I think what's going to make I think what I'm hearing from the community is that this is just too big for the neighborhood, and that's what I'm hearing. Now I'm not making a judgment yet, but so I guess I kind of want you to address that. Why do we need a building this big?
Yep.
And why does it need to look the way it does? Just kind of simplify it for me.
Sure. So on the size, that my answer is yes. If we were to, so an obvious question is, what if you made it a 3-story building?
Right.
It wouldn't be feasible to build.
So it wouldn't be financially feasible. It wouldn't work as a project. It wouldn't happen. It'd be either it wouldn't. It's not okay. That's your That's your position. Very good.
Now on the design. Specifically, there are so many shades of, I don't want to open up this box for Scott, but there are shades of, we could certainly explore other avenues. I'm not saying that it can't look any different than this, so I'm happy to take.
But you're saying there are limitations.
Absolutely.
Because there are only so many designs that can be that efficient that we have invented. I mean, and I'll address your architect for that, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
To the design, if I could, just for a moment too, and context and fit in the neighborhood, it is consistent with the design of the public safety building, both in coloration, materiality, flat roof. A lot of architectural elements are complementary to that building design.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Does the commissioners, any of the commissioners have any more questions at this point? We're not going to move to motions quite yet because I want to. Is there anybody here who wants to add additional conditions based on what we've heard tonight? And if so, what would those be? Or if you're completely satisfied with it, I want to hear your opinions, really.
If you're not dissatisfied, do I have to give you reasons why?
You don't. No, I don't. Stan, you're your own man. You tell me what you want to tell me.
And I've already said my thing. The sake of thing, I think, is just not going to work. I think it's four stories overlooking my front yard. I just don't think there's another option. Turn it the other way. Put the parking lot towards the people, towards the schools, or the.
And are you saying you're ready to deny the project at this point?
I'm going to deny it at this point.
Okay, great. How does the rest of the commissioners feel?
Mark, I think it meets
go ahead.
Meets the
Mike?
comp plan, and, the property's been vacant forever. I mean, I think it's something that's pliable for the comp plan, and we should probably go forward with it.
All right. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here. You don't have to say anything you don't want to, but Eric, Mark, Tom, if you guys want to chime in, I'd love the discussion.
I'm just concerned again with the Seika building in Lot 3 that, what's underneath that parking lot there. If at some point Seika can develop and all of a sudden they find stuff buried there that they weren't aware of, including asbestos. It'll make it prohibitive for them to actually do anything, and you're just going to end up with an empty lot like you have up in Target and Fridley, where they found there was supposed to be additional development at that site because of the presence of asbestos. That development was thrown to the side. So that's my concern, is just the outlot or the lot 3, and that how it's being handled. Also, too, how it drains on that southeast corner. The water's going to pick up a lot of speed around a 15 or 20 foot retaining wall with some alterations over there. It just seems like there's a lot of drainage issues with this site to begin with, and even though that these are addressing the drainage issues, it's not correcting anything else. So it's it's kind of just fixing, cleaning a little spot on the window so you can see out when you got snow on your windshield, and not cleaning the whole windshield type of.
Rob, I'll just add that from my perspective, it seems like if Seika thinks this site can work for them, to me, that seems like that's Seika's business. And, trying to put myself in the shoes of a nearby homeowner, and I know a few of you are related to this project, I would be awfully concerned about the threat of stormwater as well. And, how could you be reassured that this project would for sure not happen until that problem was solved?
Mhm.
So, I understand those concerns, and, I've heard from a lot of neighbors, both in this meeting and in the prior one, where we heard a lot from them. However, as somebody who was part of the group who worked on the comp plan, I mean, this is exactly what the comprehensive plan calls for. I think that the design could be moved in some ways without losing its financial viability to respond to the fact that it is across the street from single-family homes. I am aware of what affordable housing and transit-oriented development does look like in this world and in this period of time we're in. But I do think that there are ways for this design to be softened in some ways to better respond to the neighborhood. I think the city can and should do things to improve the situation for pedestrians in the area, both here and in other parts of the city. But I agree exactly with what Mike said, that this checks the boxes of what the comprehensive plan has called for and what we're looking to do in terms of bringing new families and new tax revenue into our city.
That's good. Thank you for that perspective, Tom. Anyone else? Eric, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or?
Sure. Yeah, I think I just want to echo a couple of the comments that have already been said, and first preface this as saying that I've been the homeowner across the street from an apartment building like this. I understand what that happens and how that can impact the homeowner across the street. I look at this in the larger context of our city, however, and this is an urban site. It's on a neighborhood, it's near a neighborhood, but this is a block away from the densest corridor that we have in this city. And I feel the use of this site being which if eventually fully built out, a mixed-use site, not integrated, but two uses on the same site, and the overall impact, while stark from today to opening of this building, construction of this new apartment building immediately next door to these homes, I feel like the building is sited properly on the street front. Our comprehensive plan does talk about having the parking in the rear, having the active portion of the building on the street front. I think there's arguments that can be made that makes the building and the street safer, having eyes on the street and not just a parking lot. And having the parking on the street and the building behind presents its own challenges. And we would have different discussions about the same topic, essentially. And so I am in support of this project. I do support the concerns and echo the concerns of the residents. The stormwater and sewer management, having that component locked down and in place before this happens, I think is critical. It's a known problem that we can't sign off to make worse, right? And so trusting the city that problem is fixed before this happens, before the proposed project to the north happens, I think is critical for success of this project, success of the project to the north, and success, most importantly, to the existing neighborhood.
Very good. All right, good. Are there any other comments before we move to any motions? I don't hear any comments, so motions, the recommended motions are on page 38. You're welcome to make those motions or your own. We do need to do them in a certain order, and we do need to start with the one on page 38 if that's where we're going. So Stan won't be reading this one.
I can read this one.
I can agree with waiving the reading, right?
Absolutely.
I move to waive the reading of draft resolution number 2021 dash, can you give me the last
The motion
one?
hasn't
Doesn't have
actually
one,
got an
okay.
official number, so you don't need to.
Preliminary plat approval, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we waive the reading of draft resolution for the preliminary plat approval. All those in, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sano,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes, we will waive the reading. Is there another motion?
I motion to move to waive the reading of draft resolutions number 2021 and number 2021 easement vacations, there being ample copies available to the public.
Did you say easement vacations? Because we're actually on the,
Did I miss one?
yep, the one before that, we're actually.
Taking them individually.
Yeah,
We're
that's the
gonna-
next
yeah.
one in our packet.
The
Next one, 38.
preliminary plat,
On the bottom of page 30.
bottom of page 38. We have to do the motions individually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, I read that
That's
as one
okay.
box.
That's okay.
All right, so the second motion on page 38, I motion to recommend that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the preliminary plat as presented, subject to the following conditions, there being 4 listed in the packet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We move that we recommend that the city council approve the preliminary plat as presented with the conditions that are also printed. We have a roll call vote, please.
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
No.
Sano,
Yes?
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
No. All right, well, is there another motion?
I can keep going?
Yes, sir.
Move to waive the reading of draft resolutions number 2021 and number 2021 easement vacations, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we waive the reading of the draft resolutions for easement vacations. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sano,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on a roll, I might as well just
Go-
keep
go
going
for
down
it,
the page. I motion to recommend that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the easement vacations as presented, subject to the 2 following conditions as listed below.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend that the planning commission recommend to the city council approval of the easement vacations as presented, subject to the conditions printed. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
No.
Sano,
Yes?
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
No.
Okay. I move to waive the reading of draft resolution number 2021, PUD Planned Unit Development District Plan, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We waive the reading of the draft resolution regarding planned unit development district plan, there being ample copies available to the public. May we have a roll call, please?
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sano,
Yes?
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes.
Okay. Motion to recommend that the planning commission recommends to the city council approval of the PUD, Planned Unit Development District Plan as presented, subject to the following conditions, there being 26 listed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend to the city council that the planning commission does recommend the planned unit development district plan as presented, subject to the conditions printed in our documents. And we have a roll call, please.
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
No.
Sano,
Yes?
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
No.
Okay, final two motions.
Finally on page 41.
Move to waive the reading of draft ordinance number 1616, PUD District number 2021-01, rezoning of property, there being ample copies available to the public.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We waive the reading of draft ordinance 1666, PUD District 2021-01, rezoning of property, there being ample copies available to the public. May we have a roll call on the waiving of the reading, please?
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
Yes.
Sanao,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
Yes.
And our final motion to recommend that the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council approval of the ordinance amendment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the ordinance amendment. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Novitsky,
Yes.
Vargas,
Yes.
Hoyam,
No.
Sanao,
Yes.
Kaiser,
Yes.
Ferrandino.
No. All the motions have passed and will be heard by the City Council. Is that on the 10th as well?
May 10th. Yeah.
On May 10th, and I would encourage anyone who has an opinion to let your City Council members know how you feel.
Mr. Chair, there's also a second reading of the proposed ordinance.
Thank you.
That gets carried to the second meeting in May, which is the 24th.
So May 10th for the first three things, and then the final one is the change in the ordinance, which has to be at, I believe, 3 council meetings. Has we read 3 times
Council
eventually? Right?
meetings and then a 30-day gestation period.
There you go. All right. So that's that. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know this was long and tedious, but I think it's important that everyone got heard. Thank you very much. Is there any other business before the commission?
Did you share the application? That's, yeah,
The application.
it's been received.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll go out of order, but order other business number 5. We received an application yesterday for the plant to go in front of Planning Commission next round on June 1st, and it's to a construction addition to convert a single-family home into a duplex, and it's on Hayes Street. So we will be processing that for next cycle. It will be heard at the Planning Commission meeting, but it will be, the final determination will be made by the City Council for that site. I also wanted to discuss that we are transitioning for agenda packets to go digital. And we wanted you guys to know and kind of hear your preferences on that. The city clerk has prepared iPads, designated iPads, so that the packets that we have here, ever so changing, they will be downloaded on an iPad, or you can access them from an iPad and scroll through them. And it'll even have the ability to do your votes on them as well. So we may still do the roll call for them.
Still have to.
Yeah, but you will be able to record them on the iPad. That way, when we go back to do minutes, it's more tightened up. So I just wanted to. So that's one aspect
And
of
just
it.
to relieve everybody's anxiety, there will be printed the suggested motions as well, right? So when Stan reads his motion, he's got the wording right.
I mean, I'm still going to print mine. I'll still print my packet. So I just wanted to kind of get an idea of how you guys feel as to are you comfortable going fully digital? Do some of you want to do a hybrid of both? Do some of you want hard copy only?
Certainly for things like this, I think a hard copy is essential.
I agree.
You guys probably agree with that. The rest of the stuff, certainly the minutes, I have no problem with. And yeah, I guess I leave it to the commissioners to. I mean, are you suggesting that we each have our own individual preferences, or would you like to just do one that's kind of works for the whole commission?
We do have the technology and resources now to go fully digital, and we hope to go in that, but we can never say, if someone says, give me the hard copy, we're not going to deny that. So I just wanted to kind of hear from around the table. Mark?
Very good.
I was just curious, like Wi-Fi in this room, because that's the only thing that's prohibited me from just scrolling on my
Yeah.
iPad when I'm here.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point I can bring up with the city clerk about the Wi-Fi.
There have been issues, yeah. So I think that's
Okay.
a fair
I'm willing to go
consideration.
fully digital, except for the large format stuff.
Gotcha.
But even just like a hotspot, like just to turn on when we're in here, we don't need to do the whole room. If the city can facilitate that, it would be
Okay.
more than enough.
Stan?
I'm fine with a hybrid. Like
Okay.
I said, this stuff where if you're gonna drive around, you gotta have.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the plans, I think it's good to have a final copy of the plans, hard copy for you guys. But maybe we'll do like when the packets are due, we'll post them online and let you guys know, and then deliver maybe just the plans if applicable. Save a few trees on that.
That's good.
And if you don't have the tablet available, we do have them now.
Yeah, so the city clerk has prepared tablets that we could check out. So let's say we could be dropping off essentially, or you could be picking up the iPad
Or we could
instead of
use
the
our own.
plans.
too.
Or yes, of
We've
course.
got our own, we could use our own. Okay, great. Yeah.
So just wanted to hear the preferences. Okay.
Tom, did you state your preference there?
Yeah, that sounds just fine to me. And Minerva, you're just doing a killer job so far.
Thank you. I'm trying.
I agree. Commissioners, thank you.
Thank you very much. If there is no objection, we are now adjourned.
Thank you.